Hello, thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and in today's video, things are gonna get weird because I am sharing the top 10 weirdest books that I have ever read. And now I will be talking about like 15 books in total because I have 5 honorable mentions I will be talking about at the end. But the main 10, the reason they made it onto the list and the honorable mentions didn't is because the main 10, they're ones where after you finish the book, you are still trying to make sense of it. Whereas the honorable mention books, they may have been weird, and while you're reading it, you're like, what the heck is going on right now? What am I reading? This is so weird. But once you're done with it, it made sense and you kind of understand it. Whereas, like I said, the top 10 books are ones where after you finished it, you're just like, what? What did it all mean? How does it connect? What is what? You know? So yeah, let's just get right into it, I will have this broken up in the timestamps down below. Of course, I would love it if you watch this video all the way through. But if you want to just jump into whichever book you are most interested in and skip the ones you're not interested in, I totally understand. So let's talk about the first one on the list. By the way, these are in no particular order. They are just the order in which they are stacked here beside me. Beginning with Alex Garland, The Beach. So this was adapted into a movie, by the way, with Leonardo DiCaprio. But the movie is not nearly as weird as the book is. Also, I love this cover so much because it looks like just a beach, but then like the way it's edited, like photoshopped, the palm trees look weird. And then you have Daffy Duck down there. So I love the cover. This is the UK first edition. Anyway, this book, like, it is a slow burn for one. So for the majority of the book, it's just this building tension and you know something is gonna happen, something's gonna explode, but it doesn't explode the way you think it will. And this one, like, I don't want to get into spoilers, but we also have a character who goes kind of crazy. And so because you have that going on where someone is not thinking clearly, that adds to the weirdness. And then again, that building tension where you just know something is going to happen. And then the ending is shocking and you're just like wow, it left me a bit speechless, as you can tell. So not only is this a weird one, but this could also be in a video for like crazy endings because I did not see this ending coming and it was wild. But yeah, this, by the way, quick synopsis is about a guy, I forget his name, Richard, I think, or something. He is a traveler, and then someone tells him about the ultimate traveler's location, traveler paradise, which is this place, I think, in Vietnam, where other travelers live in this commune. And so he finds this secret commune, and he becomes part of this community, and it's not as ideal as you might think, and things just get out of hand. And there are a number of scenes in here. There's one scene in particular. I won't get into details, but I'll say he finds a dead body. And there definitely seems to be some symbolism there, and there's just a lot to think about with this book. Yeah, it's a great slow burn. I love a good slow burn, because a slow burn isn't boring. It's just the slow building tension, right? So this is a great slow burn, crazy ending, and it's just a wild ride. Next up, we have The Haunting of Hill House. This is my Folio Society edition, so you can't see the title on the cover, obviously, but The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This one, I was expecting it to be just like a haunted house story, but it is so much weirder than just that. And it feels like a fever dream where this woman, Eleanor, she's in a haunted house, but more than the haunted house, it's about her losing her grip on reality and about her descent into madness, essentially. And so, yeah, fever dream is the best way to describe this one, where you're just like, wait, what's real? What isn't? You know, unreliable narrator. Plus she's in a haunted house, so you do have supernatural things going on, but then you just have her personal baggage that she's bringing into this haunted house. Again, it gives you a lot to think about, a lot to chew on afterwards, a lot to analyze and to try to make sense of, and what was real, what wasn't, what happened, what was the deal with this person or that person, why did they react the way they did, why did they say the things they did, and yeah, so there's a lot to think about. And I didn't find this book scary in like a haunted house scary kind of way, so that was unexpected too. So it's much more cerebral than you would think when it comes to a haunted house story. And this one, I think some people might consider this a bit of a slow burn too, because it's not like the edge of your seat kind of ghost story that at least when I think of a haunted house ghost story, I think of it more being scary, edge of your seat kind of a thriller. And this is not a thriller. At least I wouldn't say so. So yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about this one, but it was definitely weirder than I had thought it would be. Then we have The Double by Jose Saramago. So I like to buy first edition copies, and Jose Saramago is from Portugal. So this is the first edition Portuguese copy. So that's why it's not in English. I didn't read this physical copy, obviously. Anyway, The Double is about a guy who is watching a movie, and in the movie he sees this side character who looks exactly like him, and he becomes obsessed with finding this actor and meeting him and being like, we look exactly alike, you're my double. And just that simple premise of someone finding their exact replica just leads down this crazy journey, and people react in ways you wouldn't expect, because both men are also married, or they have one is married, one has a girlfriend. And so the way the significant others react, the way the two men react, and then the ending, like I thought I like understood what was going on in this story, and then the ending happens, and then you're just like, wait, what? And you rethink everything you thought you knew about this book. Again, there is a lot of symbolism here, so it is one that will leave you thinking. And also, the dialogue is written weird, where it's not broken up with the quotation marks, and so it can be a little confusing when you're reading it. It takes some adjustment to be like, wait, who's saying what? Like, when did they stop talking and they started talking? Because it's all kind of mixed together. So that just adds to the weird reading experience. But yeah, this one, like, I think it's up to interpretation. I don't know if there's like a set way to interpret it. Maybe there is. But if you want to check out my video where I talk about this and the movie adaptation's Enemy. But in the first half of that video, I just talk about the book. So if you want to hear me talk about this book and the way I interpreted it, and if you want to comment down below and share your thoughts, and if you had a different interpretation, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But yeah, this one was definitely weird and wild, and yeah, and I loved it. And then we have Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. This one is about a woman who is the mother to like a 2 or 3-year-old boy, and she's married, and she starts turning into a wolf. And her wolf, like so she's like a werewolf, but her werewolf side of her is called Nightbitch. And this one, like, again, like I'm going to say with all of these, at the end, you're just like, wait, what? And again, thinking like, what is it? What is the symbolism here? And as far as the context of this story, what was real, what wasn't, and what is the author trying to say with what is happening? This is one that I still think about and that I still like am trying to understand with the ending in particular. But for the most part, I loved this book. I loved the message itself, and I found it very empowering. I myself am not a mother, but just as a fellow woman, I just found it very empowering and just showing the strength of womanhood, I guess, as cheesy as that sounds. So I really liked it for that aspect as well. But yeah, it's also definitely a weird one. There is some animal harm that happens in this book, so if that is a major turnoff for you, you probably shouldn't read this one. I don't know if there was animal harm in the other ones, but yeah, this one is one I think back on a lot. And I think if you're a mom and if you like weird stuff, I would be curious what your thoughts are on this book and how it made you feel as a mother. And then we have I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This one again, I will say, well, I was going to say once you're done with this book, it makes sense. And like as you're reading it, you're just like, what the heck is going on? What does this all mean? What is happening? And then when it ends, you're like, okay, I get it. But then there's still elements within the book that you're like, wait, but what did that mean though? So even though at the end you understand it more, there's still stuff that leaves you thinking and wondering what it meant. But I will say for this one, like I want to give the disclaimer that I feel like it could trigger depression. If you struggle with depression, I would be hesitant to recommend this because while I was reading it and a few days after I was reading it, I was feeling depressed. And I didn't realize it was the book that did it until I was just like, man, why am I feeling this way? And then I was like, wait a minute, I think it's that depressing book I read. So I will say that about this. But anyway, it's about a girl who is going to see her boyfriend's family. And as they're going to see his family, she is wanting to break up with him. She is wanting to end things. And so she's like, oh, I'm thinking of ending things with this guy, but we're off to see his family. So that makes it awkward. And then, she has flashbacks to her life and they're dating as they are out traveling to see his parents, meeting his parents, the trip back home. And yeah, there's also some creepy stuff too. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but a part like near the end, like it gets creepy. It creeped me out at least. Yeah, it's definitely weird. Lots of symbolism. Yeah, things went in a direction I hadn't expected. So a weird one that will leave you thinking. And that would also be good for a reread, I think too, because there is so much to think about. And the boyfriend and girlfriend have a lot of interesting conversations that just give you a lot to dwell on outside of what the book is about. Just their conversations were just really interesting. So last month I was in the mood for weird WTF books. So on Instagram, I asked people to give me recommendations. And of those recommendations, I have read 3. The Fisherman, Dark Matter, The Last Housewife. Seems like there's another one that I read too. I guess that's it. But Dark Matter and The Last Housewife, those were weird and definitely like WTF kind of moments. But they weren't ones where after I finished it, I was still thinking about it, trying to understand it. Like they were, despite being weird or like, what is going on? Once you finished it, it was like, okay, moving on. I love Dark Matter, by the way, so I don't mean that as an insult. The Last Housewife, I have some issues with. Like it's supposed to be like this empowering book for women, but there is so much abuse towards women in the book that it's like, this isn't empowering. Like, yeah, I won't get into details here. But anyway, The Fisherman, though, was one of the books recommended. And this one was definitely weird in a way that I absolutely love. Also, I have not read H.P. Lovecraft. I think I would, though, because this can be compared to like the weird cosmic horror, which I know H.P. Lovecraft has done a lot of. And this one also is very creepy, very scary. I found it very scary. So this is like probably the only like horror novel in here. But yeah, it's about a guy who is a fisherman and then he befriends this other guy and they start fishing together. And then one guy, he wants to fish at this specific location. And turns out that location has this whole creepy history. And so then there's a story within the story, which takes up like half the book. And I was engrossed the whole time. I finished this book so fast. It was one of those books where I just read it nonstop. Like I started it one evening and then I finished it the next day and I just couldn't put it down. So I was just completely engrossed when I read it. And yeah, it is weird in a cosmic horror kind of way. Great imagery, so vivid, so creepy. Yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about it, but I would definitely recommend it. And then we have Bunny by Mona Awad. This book kind of took over BookTube and BookTok. I don't have TikTok, but so I've heard. It was popular on BookTok. And yeah, this one, I don't like it as some of the others I've talked about, but it was definitely weird and is definitely one that will keep you thinking, trying to understand, trying to make sense of it. And there are different interpretations for it. And now I will say a reveal that happens was one I had seen coming and I was kind of like I was hoping it would be something different. But then even if it has that obvious reveal, there was still enough other things going on that it was still a good read and it still had things that I hadn't expected and it was still weird. And there were definitely moments when I was just like, what is happening right now? And then the ending is one that you're just going to be like, what? What does that mean? So yeah, different interpretations for this. There is like a Reddit thread where someone gives their interpretation and I liked what they had to say about it. So if you're reading this or if you have read this, you could Google like Bunny Mona Awad interpretation Reddit and that Reddit thread will probably pop up. But yeah, this one also has like animal harm. There are some bunnies that get hurt in this book. So be aware of that. But yeah, if it's kind of like, I heard someone compare it to like Mean Girls and Frankenstein. Seems like there was another one in there too. But yeah, if you want a book that's a combination of Mean Girls and Frankenstein, this is it. And then we have City of Saints and Madmen by Jeff Vandermeer. So this book was published, like it has different kinds of editions because he kept adding onto it. So this is one of the earlier editions, which is very thin. If you buy the latest edition, it's like 500 pages or something because they are a series of novellas and short stories, all that take place in the city of Ambergris. And also with Jeff Vandermeer, I could include the Southern Reach trilogy on here too, which I should. So Annihilation is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy, and City of Saints and Madmen is the first book in the Ambergris trilogy. And I would recommend both of these trilogies. They're both weird in different ways. I think the Southern Reach is weird in like a sci-fi cosmic horror kind of way, whereas City of Saints and Madmen is weird more in like, so City of Saints of Madmen I would say is more magical realism, but as the Ambergris trilogy goes on, it gets more and more into the cosmic horror, I would say. So the second book is Shriek, the third book is Finch. And once you're in Finch, like that I would say is cosmic horror. But yeah, I love Jeff Vandermeer. I love the weird worlds he creates. And it's kind of like The Fisherman where it's like, you know, the cosmic kind of weird stuff that's going on. And also like, I don't know if there's a term for it, but when it relates to nature, like science and nature and horror all kind of mixed together, if that makes sense. So yeah, and these are a series of short stories too, so that's nice too. So even though the later edition is thicker, they are novellas and short stories, so you read it pretty quickly. But yeah, so Jeff Vandermeer books, so Annihilation is about, well, the Southern Reach trilogy is about Area X, which is this area created by aliens essentially. And in this area, people come in and they don't come out. And it's about a woman who goes in to the Area X and what she experiences there. So yeah, I loved it. It is definitely creepy, I would say, but not as like scary as The Fisherman in my opinion, but it was creepy. And yeah, I would just highly recommend both of these trilogies. And then we have A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. This is another one I keep meaning to reread. By the way, A Touch of Jen, Nightbitch, and Bunny are all three books I talked about in a video called Weird Books Written by Women, if you want to check that out. But A Touch of Jen, this one is again a slow burn where it's just building throughout the book. And the ending is pretty wild. I wouldn't consider this horror, but then the ending kind of takes a horror route. But it's like a sharp turn and suddenly like we're getting into the horror genre. But even building up to the end, it was definitely weird. And it's a look into social media, into the self-help culture. I guess it's mainly those two things. Yeah, it's about this couple who is obsessed with this woman on Instagram, and then they are invited to this vacation, and their obsession with her kind of gets out of control. And then, like I said, like this self-help guru is introduced to the story. Things go in a direction I hadn't expected, which is another common thing with these books where all of them, I like don't see what's coming and I'm like shocked when it goes in certain directions. So something happens in this book partway through where I was like, wait, what? And then the ending happens, and the ending you're just like, huh? And trying to make sense of it, and it was very unexpected. But yeah, I love this book. I loved the characters. I mean, not that I liked the characters, but I just thought they were super interesting, very distinct, and I enjoyed reading about each of them. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. I definitely want to reread it. And last but not least, I couldn't talk about weird books and not talk about Philip K. Dick. So this is my Folio Society edition of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and A Scanner Darkly. And now both of these books are weird. I remember in A Scanner Darkly, there's a line where he's listening to recordings and he's talking about the tape recording, saying it's like miles and miles of tripped out tape. And that's how the book feels. It's just miles and miles of like tripped out, like what is happening right now? And it's about people that are hooked on this fictional drug called Substance D. And one of the guys is a drug addict, but he's an undercover cop, but he's so undercover that his fellow cops don't know who he is. And so they're watching these drug addicts, he being one of them. And then as he is watching the footage, like he loses touch with reality. And basically that's what it's about, is this guy, Bob Archer. It is about him as he loses his grip on reality due to Substance D taking over his brain. So definitely weird, definitely trippy. It also has some upsetting things in there as well, like the desperate things people have done when they're hooked on drugs. So be warned on the content with that. But then Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, of course, was made into the movie Blade Runner. And this one takes place in a dystopian future where there are robots, which are called replicas, which are like slaves for the humans. And then there are very few animals in the world, so everybody has electric animals. And it's a book with a ton of symbolism. It's also a look into religion as well, because you have Mercerism in the book, which I found really interesting, and how that works. And our main character and his struggle as he hunts for androids, along with, caring for his electric sheep and the drama going on with his wife. So it's a look into substances in the future and your identity and humanity and empathy. A lot of symbolism. So much symbolism in the end. Like, you could talk to people about this book for hours and hours and go around trying to understand it and sharing your different interpretations. And it was fascinating. Highly, highly recommend. There's a reason why Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is so famous in like the sci-fi world. And that wraps it up for the top 10 weird books list. And so now I'm just gonna quickly go through my honorable mentions. And some of these are ones I've talked about before, but What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This one, again, is more in the horror genre, and it's definitely like body horror. And again, it deals with mushrooms, and it's a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And yeah, this one is just very creepy and weird, and just like, yeah, like I said, definitely like body horror, where certain scenes you're just like, oh man, like, yeah. But I loved it, and it's a super short read, and I loved the characters. So I just loved the style in which it was narrated, and then the story itself I absolutely loved and found it very creepy and weird and unsettling. Speaking of mushrooms, I know What Moves the Dead, City of Ambergris, and Mexican Gothic are all like in the mushroom genre, fungus genre. But yeah, this is a classic Gothic tale about a woman who goes to this Gothic mansion, and she is there to help her sickly cousin. And while she is there, she learns about this family that her cousin has married into and all of their sinister secrets, which involve mushrooms. And definitely some weird, again, creepy, unsettling things that happen. I wouldn't say this is horror, but depending on your threshold, there are some scenes where you're just like, ew. But yeah, it gives you a lot to think about. And I love the way the author addresses some big topics, including like sexism and eugenics and colonialization and racism. And yeah, so I really loved it. And I loved our main character. I was just rooting for her the whole time. And yeah, it was a wild ride. And again, fever dream-esque, because there's some things where you're just like, wait, what was real? What wasn't? And yeah, I loved it. And then The Last House on Needless Street. This is a book where while you're reading it, you're like, WTF, what is going on? How is this all connected? What is happening right now? But then once you finish it, like it all makes sense. So it doesn't leave you, it leaves you thinking, but it doesn't leave you guessing, because by the time you finish the book, it all makes sense. Everything's wrapped up. And that's not a complaint. I like that. But that's why it didn't make it in the top 10, because this wasn't one that left me with questions. I felt like all my questions were answered by the end of the book, but so well done. This is a 5-star read, and I would highly recommend it. Again, this one is also pretty creepy at times. Like, there is a few aspects of this which are very upsetting, and it deals with child abuse, which is very upsetting to read about, so be warned. And then Children of the New World by Alexander Weinstein. This is a dystopian future, and all of these stories deal with children and how they are impacted by like electronics and technology in the future. And each of these stories are weird. Some of them are unsettling, some of them are disturbing, some of them are just a really interesting look into our society as he talks about this future fictional society, and just, yeah, how our lives are taken over by technology, you know, even more so in this book, but in today's day and age, right? Technology rules the world. And this is just a look at it, you know, how it will be going into the future. So yeah, that wraps it up for the weirdest books I have ever read that I also loved. Comment down below if you have read any of these. Also comment down below some of the weirdest books you have ever read, because I would love some recommendations. 2 on my TBR are The King in Yellow, I believe it is called. I forget who wrote that, as well as Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I currently have Piranesi on Libby. That one just came available, so I will be reading that one soon. But yeah, comment down below your weird book recommendations, and I will try to make my way through the recommendations as they come in, because I love weird books. I love books that take you on a wild ride, that leave you shocked, and that are just like something that is so out of the usual, right? And that takes turns that you don't see coming. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to become a Patreon, click the link in the description. And for as little as $3 a month, you can have access to exclusive Patreon content. But if you don't want to become a Patreon, that is totally fine. Just watching these YouTube videos means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.